So obviously there's a lot of research out there how to train. 80-20 seems to be
Yes.
quite a big one.
Yeah.
Professionals, it might be a bit more realistic, but what's your opinion, pro, amateur? Is it feasible, or should you kind of alter those kind of ratios?
Yeah, great question. Listening to some guys, physiologists in this space that are way more smarter than me, what I've learned recently in the last couple of years that the context is key, what the outcome goal is. So let's elaborate a bit more. That most age groups, if they trained 80-20 principle all year round, they'd be quite fast all the time. They would be not neglecting energy systems, and they'd do great. Probably sprint, Olympic, half Ironman, even probably up to Ironman. Professionals can't do that because the context, the specificity is not good enough. For example, an Ironman, they need to be doing like 100k TTs within a 140k ride at and above Ironman pace, for example, for long periods of time to get used to the resilience and the durability. So there's a lot of studies around durability. So classic example, if you're doing a 5-minute all-out effort at the beginning of a 2-hour ride, and then you do like an hour and a half, like I've got you to do, an hour and a half, pretty on it, like 80 to 85% effort, and then see what you can do 5 minutes at the end of that. Then obviously there'll be a slight drop-off, but your heart rate and RPE will go up after 2-3 hours because your percentage of your threshold drops and your ability to hold that. And that's what Ironman racing is all about. So you've got a definite difference between a professional and amateur there. But as far as principles go, if you stick to 80-20 and then working backwards from your event, you bring in more what's called a pyramidal approach, where you, instead of 80-20, you're more like 65-30%. So 65 zone 2, 30% in that tempo area, and then 5% sprinkles of intensity. That tends to be very successful. So that's what professionals will do, and amateurs will also, we try to, certainly our method, and that is pretty bang on. So all year round, it certainly is fine if you're just kind of a lifestyle athlete and want to maintain, but for winter, that's a fantastic approach. But then when you go another level down, if you look at lab testing, that might not work for certain individuals because of percentages of their VO2 max and et cetera, et cetera. So for example, with you, like, we might have done that VO2 max training, but what we've got really good gains of late through winter, which is what I wouldn't normally do with most athletes, and certainly a few years ago with you, is working quite a lot around your second turn point above and below. Mm-hmm. So I suppose you could call that kind of threshold training. It's quite corrosive and quite glycotic, like burns through a lot of carbohydrates, but we don't do it for a long period of time. But sprinkling that in has like definitely given you, and then quite a lot of steady volume, because you're still in your 20s, you need that, and that you seem to be swimming, biking, and running like consistently well in all three. Like when we say well, like for this time of the year, you're flying. Right. So I don't know. Does that answer? I'm just trying to give you the best answer around different approaches. Did that answer fair?
Yeah, so it basically depends on person, individual.
Yeah, which it always is quite an easy, feels like a cop out, but actually
it's like a no one size fits all.
Basically, you can't go wrong if you bring someone in. I think if you're just doing like a lot of 80-20 work, but it's quite a lot. If that's 2 hours of out of 10 hours a week, like 8 hours like zone 2 work and 2 hours spread, into intervals in high intensity, like above threshold. That's actually quite hard to do. So it's actually realistic. It's often more like 90-10.
Yeah.
But if we just use that protocol that's been around for a while. That's how the big Norwegian, all those big cross-country skiers, those guys with massive engines, they pretty much stick to that, yeah. And they're massive engines. Sorry, bud.
And then obviously a second one, which is more personal to me, and obviously what you've helped me with.
I started chatting about
obviously stomach problems is quite a big thing within triathlon. People have faced them.
Yeah.
Obviously with me, it's probably been a bit more unique. For everyone else, what would kind of be like your tips that you'd give them to try and work through, those kind of
Yeah.
tips to work through to kind of figure out what's
Troubleshoot.
going on, because obviously it's not always nutrition.
Yeah.
What would be your best advice for someone maybe suffering with equal issues?
Yeah, great question. Rule it out. Rule out the low-hanging fruit. Clean up the diet. Sometimes it might be eliminating some things for a period of time. Maybe cut out dairy, maybe cut out some high levels of wheat. It's not necessarily that causing the problem. So it used to be quite a lot around gluten, and gluten's a culprit. Trial and error of that. Then after a month, introduce it again, see if it triggers. If that's not making any difference, same in your case, for example, then it's like, well, there's definitely a link. Where's the back pain that you're getting potentially from what segment of, you can link a visceral organ to a segment in your spine. So from a nerve innervation. So there's some really good specialist physios that kind of go, okay, well, it's T3, T4, T5, that's linked to X, Y, Z. And they need to do some exploration in your visceral and try and free that up. And often that's the case that's manifesting in back pain. So I think with you, it was kind of breathing rate, diaphragm, nerve innervation around, and chiropractors are great with that as well. But I would eliminate the food, nutrition stuff, because that's something you can do straight away and trial and error, and you change. Someone in your 20s and 30s, you don't get away with it the same in your 40s. That you might be able to eat, like I know I've reluctantly could say this, but I've changed. I'm making different choices now because just don't digest it as the same, but which is fine. It's just like, oh, okay, your metabolism does slow down. But yeah, that's off the point. So if someone's listening going, I've got some stomach issues, is it while you're training and racing? Okay, it's probably the amount of sugars you're putting in, dehydrated gut. So back to hydration, a dehydrated gut, lots of sugars. Do we always need that? Also can use real foods and see if it's still triggering it. And stress in your life is normally the bigger problem, which people can't measure very well until it's too late. So get a cortisol test. Do it in the morning at 9 a.m., 8 a.m., saliva. And you guys are laughing. And then just check what your cortisol's like. That's another big one, because there's not loads that shows up in bloods for that sort of stuff, yeah.